Good morning. Today is the 9th day of Tammuz, the 28th of June. Right? At least something I know. Okay. Lo Tochlu al Adam. We're going to learn the short essay, which is a beautiful, beautiful essay in one of the first instances. It seems very, very early, in which the Alter Rebbe explains the connection or the relationship between the divine soul and the animal soul. He says in the Gemara, in Brachot, Daf Yud Amud Bet, it says, "Lo tochlu al adam kodem shitpalelu al damchem." The verse is from Leviticus 19:26. Lo tochlu al adam. You should not eat with the blood. That's what it literally means. So when you eat an animal, when you slaughtered it, you can't eat it with the blood.
Drain the blood.
You have to drain the blood. Of course, you don't drain all the blood. There's no such thing. But it's the quart, the first quart, the revi'it dam, which is like the chayus, the life force in the animal. In any case, so the Gemara says about this, lifnei shetitpalelu al damchem. You should not eat before you have prayed for your own blood. And lo tochlu al adam says al adam is like on the blood. That's what it means literally. And in Hebrew, when you say that, the meaning is with the blood, meaning that the blood is as it is. And whose blood is it talking about? It's talking about your blood. What? No, here. So it said, and now that's what the Gemara says, that from this we learn that you shouldn't eat before you pray the morning prayers. This is where you learn it from this verse. How do you learn it from this verse? Like, what's the connection? So the Alter Rebbe says, "V'tamua," and there's a question here. What's the question? V'lo talmud Torah keneged kulam, because we know that learning Torah is equivalent and has the same weight as all the other commandments, and it only says you shouldn't eat before you pray, but it doesn't say you shouldn't eat before you learn. Why is it that if you want to learn, then you can eat first? In other words, what's the order that you can do? It's perfectly fine. You daven, you pray in the morning, you eat, and then you go learn.
Maybe you learn before you daven.
You're giving another option, but I'm saying there's nothing that forbids a person from eating and then going to learn. Okay? He doesn't have to first learn and then go eat. There's no such thing. The Gemara doesn't say anything like that. So you're allowed to eat. You finish davening, you go to eat something, and then you learn. And you see that that's what people do here every single day. But this is a common way that people act. What? There you go. So that's the order. But you could say that it doesn't bring you, that in the middle you're supposed to, if you were learning, it's not from the Siddur, it's from somewhere else. So it wouldn't be there. But let's say that you're right. V'inyan. So why is this? What is the discrepancy between prayer and learning Torah? How are they different in relation to eating and to the blood? He says, V'inyan, to understand this, we first have to understand what the sphere of the crown is. V'inyan midat keter shu ratzon kolel kol hamidot. From will, which is in the crown, come all the other faculties of the soul. They're all dependent on will. If a person has will, then he'll study, then he'll have intellect, then he'll have emotions, but he first has to have a will. If you don't have will, so it's like a person who's depressed. A person who's depressed, so there's no will. They wake up in the morning, don't want to get out of bed. If you don't want to get out of bed, you also don't want to develop yourself. You're lost. And that's the situation the person is in. But he gives another example. Kmo midat hakas. Let's say a person is angry. That's a midah, that's a faculty. Because you can get angry. That's your gvura, your might, going overboard, and it becomes anger. So how is that related to will, to the crown? Im lo haya retzono baze lo haya ko'es. If, to begin with, he wouldn't want to have an expectation for the opposite happening. For instance, he wanted to drive his car from home to work. That's what he wanted. And then he gets into an accident on the way. He gets really angry. Why is he so angry? Because that's not what he wanted. He didn't want to waste his time now on an accident. Okay? He wanted something to happen, and the opposite happened. So he must have wanted something. So the will came before the anger. The will is a substrate on which everything else grows. So if you don't have this will, then you don't have anything. And same thing is with joy and with sorrow. A person feels joy or feels sorrow depending on what they want. So if you want your son to get married, then you go to his chasna, you go to his wedding. So you feel tremendous joy because that's what he wanted. If you didn't want it, what do you care? Right? When you go to someone else's wedding, and it's not exactly what you wanted. In fact, you didn't even want to go, but your wife dragged you. You don't feel any joy. Why would you feel joy? You could get caught up in the dancing, but it's not because you're feeling joy. It's just because you want to dance, maybe.
Going through the motion.
Right. So all this comes from will. V'adam hu hanefesh hu haratzon. And so the link here is that blood, about the blood, the Torah says, V'adam hu hanefesh. The blood is the psyche, nefesh is psyche, but it also means, like, Im yeshet nafshechem piguli belavan ha'arami. There's a verse that says, if it is in your psyche, Im yeshet nafshechem, it doesn't mean your psyche there. It says, if you want to, go call upon Lavan the Aramite for me, says Yaakov to the shepherds. I think. I don't remember who he said it to. But
To the shepherd.
something like that.
Yeah,
It may be that I'm completely wrong. But there's this verse that says, Im yeshet nafshechem, if you want. And it uses the word nefesh for want, because to nefesh means, psyche literally means what you want. That's what it is. The person's inside is, first of all, what they want. Okay? So that gives birth to the whole gamut of faculties in the soul. So, what do we have here? V'yesh shtei nefashot keyadua. And there's two souls, as we know. There's two psyches, as we know. There's the animal soul and the divine soul. The animal psyche and the divine psyche. Dehainu shnei ratzonot. So a person has opposing wills. They're different. Not opposing maybe yet, but they're different. It's what his divine soul wants, and there's what his animal soul wants. What does his animal soul want? Easy. It wants to survive. That's what it wants. It wants to live. What does the divine soul want? To connect to God. So right away these are seemingly contradictory. But they're not really, because the Torah says v'chai b'hem, that you can survive, you can live, you can actually get more life out of the mitzvos, out of connecting to God, than you can if you just serve yourself. Okay, let's assume that they're not that opposing, but they're certainly different.
But the blood you're eating is not your blood. Blood of an animal.
We're not talking about the animal though.
No, you said
We took it out of the literal meaning a long time ago. We said, Lo tochlu al dam, your blood. You shouldn't eat on your blood, with your blood. It says it. There it's talking about an animal. The implicit understanding there is that it's talking about animals that you've slaughtered in order to eat. But right away, the Talmud already says, Rava I think says it there, I don't remember who says it, that what this also means is you shouldn't eat without first praying. By praying, you're uplifting your own blood, and then after you've uplifted your blood, you can go eat and increase the blood. The ancient system of understanding digestion was that the food is eaten and it becomes blood. You've heard this before, right? Which part becomes the best parts of the food become blood for the brain. The lower parts of the food become for the heart and the inner organs. And then the lowest parts of the blood, they go to the extremities. That was the ancient way that they looked at digestion. Everything that you ate, it was transformed into blood. Who transforms it into blood, by the way?
Interesting question.
The liver. That's how they saw it.
Oh, yeah?
That the liver turns it into blood.
Look at that.
I think from the, what's the thing next to the liver that does that? Lavlav. Not lavlav. Not the pancreas. The other one.
Chol?
Chol. How do you say it? Chol?
Mm.
The spleen. The spleen and the liver are somehow almost the same thing. I don't know. They're connected. So they saw it as one system, I think. In any case, that's what produces blood. In their, they didn't know that blood comes where exactly it's produced. I don't know if we know. Do we know exactly where it's produced? Probably.
No.
It's part of the blood. It's part of the blood. It's not everything. If you look at what cleans the blood every day, that's like, in theory, that's the liver. It's still the liver. The liver is like the sponge that it goes through in order to clean it.
Yeah, but it doesn't reproduce.
Right. I understand. What produces the plasma? Because the bone marrow doesn't produce plasma, as far as I understand. It produces the white blood cells and other cells maybe, but the plasma itself, I don't know. It doesn't matter. This is it doesn't matter. This was their picture. Okay, that the food becomes blood, so you can't add to your blood before you've prayed. That was the thing. So now we don't want. That was the picture of science. I always explain this. The sages were not scientists. They didn't sit in a laboratory and perform autopsies on cadavers. They didn't do this. It wasn't their. It's not their thing. So, if it fit, if what science was saying fit what they understood from the Torah, they would use it as an illustration, as an example. But they never put their weight behind it and said, "Oh, this is the way the world works." That's not their business. They're not interested in that. As far as they're concerned, the way the world works is how the Torah says it works. Does the Torah say what produces blood? No. Torah doesn't have a verse about what produces blood. Does the picture that by eating you make more blood, does that fit certain things? I said yes, it fits. It fits this idea that we have here, that you can't pray before you can't eat before you pray. And now he's asking, so what about Torah? Why can you eat before you learn Torah? So to answer this, he has to first of all explain that the blood represents the psyche, and the psyche is not just represents, it means literally will. Okay? The literal meaning of this word is will. So now we have two wills, and they're opposing, but they can be opposing. ומפכים. ולהתלבש אחד בחברו מוכרח שיתבטלו רצון אחד בחברו ויוכלל בו. And if they oppose, and you still want to become coherent, you want to act with coherency, that you're doing one act, so one of them has to nullify within the other. So, if I decide that I'm going to spend 30 minutes learning, at the same time, I could have used those 30 minutes to make another $100 on Amazon. I don't know, whatever. Okay? I have to make the decision. So my animal soul has to come and say, I nullify my will, which is to make more money to survive, and I'm going to learn. I'm going to do something else. Why? Because my divine soul, that's what it wants. A person goes to work wants to go to work in the morning. The Torah tells him you have to go daven first. You first have to pray. So he has to nullify the animal will and include it within the divine will that he has. Okay, but what's the main thing that he's teaching here? That you can't have one without the other. The main chiddush here is that even when you're doing a mitzvah, the animal soul is along for the ride. Why is it along for the ride? Because it's also a will. Unless it nullifies, and here he says the nullification causes hitlabshut, it causes enclothement. So now you're basically doing something, and on the inside, you've got the animal soul agreeing. It has to agree at some level. It has to nullify itself. And it's included in the act. But the same is also true when you do something that's not good. The divine soul has to nullify. Maybe it doesn't agree, but it has to nullify. And it's included, it's enclosed within the act. So you've got this problem that when you do something that's wrong, you can't get rid of the divine soul. It's not like hovering above you and everything's fine. It's taken down to enclose within your action. So Baal Kocho, against its better judgment, it has to agree. So what is that called in the Tanya? What does he call it later in the Tanya? He says this is like a person taking the king's head and putting it into a latrine full of excrement. Because there's no other option, he says. Because if you have two opposing wills, and you're going to do something, when you do something, you can only do one thing, you can't do both. So the other one can't just disappear. It has to enclose itself within the one that's in control now, and it goes along for the ride. And it's there, okay? Because you can't act with two opposing wills at the same time. Which is not the case, he says, with all the other faculties, where there can be a carrying of opposites. This is an incredible statement. He's saying that when you have joy, he says you can have joy for both reasons. You can have joy because of the animal soul, and you can have joy because of the divine soul also. You can have both wills can, in this case, and not the wills, but the meaning that it has for you is split. On the one hand, I'm very happy. On the other hand, I know that I have a big bill to pay at the end of the evening, and my survival doesn't like it. I have both. He says, in all the other faculties of the soul, there can be a carrying of opposites. That I want, again, want is here not so good because he's saying that in want you can't have both opposites at the same time. But I love what I'm doing. I also hate what I'm doing. And I have joy from what I'm doing, and I also feel complete sorrow at what I'm doing because, like the example of wedding, I'm really enjoying the fact that my son is getting married. On the other hand, I'm dreading the bill that I'm going to get at the end of the evening. So they combine. But with will, he says he can't. What? Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow with this and see how this all comes together. It's very short. It's